Peace, 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 peace. Greetings, greetings, greetings. The sun is out. Oh, give honor to Source, Creator, whatever your higher power is. Clap it up for yourself. If you made it here to this video, big ups. Whatever you're going through in life, you're going to get through it. You're valuable. I see you from inside out. You know what I'm saying? I love you. I appreciate you, wherever you are. Let me dive right in, I guess, or backstroke, whatever. But y'all check out. I'm grateful. I'm feeling real. I'm vibing like really with this the blue right now, and then like the masterpiece is also like helping illuminate the artistry. One thing about like as an artist, like we express ourselves through just everything, and it's like me reconnecting to that innocence and childlike aspect of myself, having gone through so much of this healing. I realized that what I'm coming to a lot of self-awareness is this like being more colorful, and it's like the vibrancy of expressing that, or the neutrality, however you say it, like of balancing, how to do that. So my artistry is like literally not just expressed in what you see, but also it's like people who are in the music, arts, writing, so forth. It's like these things are literally our livelihood or who we are. And to simply have that like connection divinely is even more beautiful because it's all an expression. So again, the hair wrap is something, again, I actually created from like a old shirt, and it like the material, it stretches, but no one would know that. And the way I cutted it and it like wrapped it around, folded it, boom, and then voila. I just feel like it's just so innovative when you can just come up with your own like solution or something before I just go out there and feel like I gotta purchase something. I'm like, hold on, I can create this. So before I get all over the place or just talk about this, the topic at hand is emotional intelligence. And I was like, now recently put this on, I was like, blue is one of my favorite hues or colors. And so it naturally gives me like, those of you that are familiar with Orisha, like Yemoya, or like the ocean, the emotions, the rivers, all things that, the marine life, all things that just deals with like the cleansing, the spiritual aspect, how water is so sacred, just things primordial, things dealing again with the emotional aspect that I'm going to talk about. And this topic again, emotional intelligence, brought me, and I was like, this hair wrap is perfect for this topic, which again may not have anything to do with, anything to do with like what others may, doesn't even matter, but how it connects perfectly to what I'm speaking about, because it just reminds me of the emotions and even my experience in like right now what the topic I'm going to speak about, even just as a man who reflects the feminine and both masculine principles, and out just beyond just the title of a man, but having to dive more into how I develop my emotions. I've talked about this a lot, like when it comes to how we as men, little boys, develop our emotional resonance or our nurturing, and all things dealing with emotional intelligence through and from our mothers, whether in that being in the womb, and more so how we display that to women or little girls, and how we just how we develop these characters or this narrative or who we are and how we interact in relationship. So I was telling someone like how me even getting to this place of emotional, being in tune, what I like to call, or having this emotional intelligence, has a lot to do with how I reflected so much on my relationships with my mother, my grandmother, and a lot of things have been coming up recently, reconnecting with, sisters, or reconnecting with, um, having to go through a lot of cycles to where I'm able now to meet, not only having to reconnect and see the emotional unavailability, that I experienced, and the emotional neglect and abandonment from that of my, mother and grandmother, and, not all women, but seeing how that played a vital role in me becoming the man, or being in tune with who I am now, being restored with that. And this is the reason I'm highlighting this, is because we see a lot of things on social media, especially we see a lot of focus on men and women, and relationships. It's always this versus, or ego, or this dominance, or who's wrong or right per se. But me, I'm able to dissect it in another aspect or realm of things, to see beyond that, and be able to see like the essence, or the childlike, how they develop, who they are, and where did it stem from. So with that being said, a lot of us as young men develop our emotions, and we had emotionally been abused or neglected in ways to where, you hear this topic again in these dialogues on these podcasts. It's about how this person isn't showing this, or this person has to have this materialistically, but what about, do they have a sense of awareness of their emotion, or how we as men have developed so much to be so emotional impulsive. And I realized that I didn't have a man or men, that was really consistent in that field, or that aspect of what emotional intelligence stemmed from, or how to even navigate emotions. So that's been a big and huge theme, even at my age now, and seeing the awareness and the maturity around what it is to be emotionally in tune and emotionally intelligent. And so through my relationships, I realized, going all the way from my mother and her grandmother, I saw how they display their emotions. I saw how the self-sacrificing through the careers, their environments, or whatever it was, to and how, see how women interacted with each other in an abusive manner, in an aggressive manner, and not in a healthy emotional way, where they listen or actively have their emotions, someone listen to them. So seeing how that has affected me at that moment as a young man, and recently reconnecting with sisters, and them, as I spoke about how me being able to see the pattern with my mom, grandmother, and so forth, and see how that affected my sisters. So I'm able to recognize the emotional neglect and abandonment that I witnessed, and they also witnessed, and how that shows up completely different from a man and on a woman. And I'm seeing this displayed in not just, people that I love, or people that, immediate family, but I'm seeing this like across the board. And that can play out again differently from a little boy who, has went through being verbally abused or emotionally neglected, to where there's a hypersensitivity when it comes to expressing himself, or there's immediately, in relationships or experiencing, gravitating, or just wanting relationships that still connects or are rooted in that emotional neglect or that abandonment. And I experienced that. And in that process, I saw my behavior in response when I didn't receive, or when I was even in relationships that came about, let's say, even if it was a relationship with, myself and a woman, and she didn't have kids, there were my experience from being neglected in that aspect, or having experienced that with a mother, is that let's say I would, become more overreact to certain things when my emotional needs at that moment I had no awareness of wasn't being met. You know, even on the topic where you can still engage in an intimate setting of sexually, but also that emotional aspect is also a form of intimacy. Someone who's actively listening. And so when I didn't receive that, again, I realized how much that I didn't have that balance when I was younger. Then I would go look or search for these things externally, self-sacrificing myself in relationships to overly give or overgive of myself to meet the needs, emotional needs of everybody else but my own. And so that pattern continued for so many years because, again, I had no awareness that, had no awareness how important my emotion aspect of who I was just as vital as my, just as important as my spiritual well-being and my physical well-being. And so having seen that pattern, I came to the awareness like, whoa, it showed up in, let's say I would gravitate towards women in a relationship with women that had kids. So it's like it dawned on me, because I would get in relationships as such, because a part of me will gravitate towards or purposely attract women like that, because it was an internal thing to be in a relationship with them, with a woman who was particularly a mother, because she had this deeper or like motherly energy in a way. All women do, but that motherly energy to where she knew how to nurture her son in a way, depending on how that dynamic looked. And so I found myself in relationships with, codependent on that. I would be so dependent on like that emotional, my feelings being met, or my feelings being more, feeling like my emotions were valuable. And so in that relationship, when I didn't feel like that, or when I was in a relationship with, a woman who had kids or had one child, I now came to the awareness, like when I was in that, I was fighting for my emotions to be heard, or me to be listened to, or, from a wounded place. And we see this a lot with men, but I myself, from my own experience, try to fight for that in so many ways. Like, look at me, my emotions matter. But let's say if a mother had a little child or children, her first need or first response would be to that child first. So me being in a wounded state at that time, not aware or unaware of my own, and realizing my own emotions, I have to take care of first. I have to show up for me first. I would, you would see certain men, or, would act out or do things because, or impulsively, I would see myself trying to just, get out of Dodge or run off, because as soon as I found like someone wasn't giving me something or reciprocating what I was giving, then there would be, immediately just give up. And a lot of that was due to a lot of inconsistent relationships, or in and out, or abusive relationships, verbally, physically. All those things built up with the emotional neglect, the emotional abandonment, the physical abandonment, a lot of things that, again, subconsciously resurface. Your fears around these things resurface in these relationships, because I was telling my partner that, we naturally carry a mother and father energy, feminine and masculine energy. So with that, a lot of us have had to be a caregiver for ourselves, or some may say parent ourselves, because of the emotionally unavailable parent or guardian, or because of someone who wasn't physically there. So a part of that created an imbalance naturally. Or let's say they were there, but we didn't receive that receive that reciprocity of, the being empowered by voicing our opinion or, expressing our emotions to that of a caregiver without it being shunned or without it being, brushed up under the rug for so long. Or, them, even your caregivers, holding on to secrets, or, them not knowing how to express their emotions fully or feeling like they have an active listener. So there's this superiority to where, I'm your mama, I'm your dad, you can't tell me what to do, and that right there creates, again, this dialogue of versus, like me versus the child versus the mother, or the competition or the ego. So this has been developed so long. And again, in these relationships, I realized being able to see how I developed the emotional intelligence. I came to this awareness because simply I had to experience the woundedness around what it was not to be emotionally intelligent. Or let's say the ignorance, emotionally ignorant. And I look at the word ignorance, it's like it has ignore in it. So we we all, or some of us, have been experiencing this. I know myself, having grown up in environments as such. Let me make sure my phone not getting hot. I saw a lot of women, and this is not to devalue in them in any way, but I'm able to see how it affected my sisters and a lot of women in my family, because there were a lot of women who were verbally abusive towards their kids. So you will see this dialogue play out, and I've seen it play out with, let's say, cousins have kids, and you will see them from, that resentment created between the mother and daughter, or mother and son. That resentment created, the son don't really express his emotions because he's developed a disconnect from the mama, because the mama has been disconnected from her emotions. And she don't really know what it is to express herself, or have had a safe place to express herself, or feel secure to express herself, whether it be from the men she's with that just looked at her from a physical aspect, or just looked at her on a surface level, and that being connected to whatever she has experienced with her father. You see how this cycle continues? So that looks different from the son and daughter. So let's say, it really takes a toll on a lot of women who have had emotionally unavailable mothers, and then who have had emotional abusive mothers. So that daughter may develop an aspect to where, let's say she was abused, then that can affect her relationship with women, whether she wants to trust them, whether she wants to even create a dialogue with other women. And that's a lot of things that's not discussed, because there's been so much messiness and disloyalty, dishonesty, foundations that are now being brought to the surface, subconscious fears around a lot of our elders who have ignored their own shit for so long, or have and we as the generation after have suppressed our emotions so long, to where now that we standing in our power and speaking up for ourselves, they automatically deflect or go in defensive mode. And we have dealt with, caregivers or parents like this, who have, neglected, parts of themselves, or their inner child, or, their innocence have been, they still have that narrative of taking on so much pain from, some of them carrying resentment towards their own kids, or having jealousy, or so many things towards, themselves, but it reflects out and projected onto the children because of them not being heard or feeling like they have been seen. So a lot of our mothers and our fathers, or people, no matter what status and career and all these things that they have obtained in the physical or the material aspect of things, so no matter what they have obtained, there is still a sense of abandonment there, a sense of emotional neglect. So we're talking about being in experiences where you can have people who didn't want to have children, or let's say someone was forced upon. It's a lot of scenarios that I can go into depth about. But, a lot of our caregivers are people who didn't have a lot of awareness of, like we do now, around how it is to take care of our well-being emotionally, mentally, physically, all those things spiritually. All these things matter because these are parts of ourselves that we have neglected, not just in the physical, but it all is connected to who we are and how we show up. So you got to realize a lot of these things is how we've been showing up in relationships. We never have shown up whole because a part of ourselves we have been abandoned so long. And that's how I realized I couldn't have showed up whole or showed up this way if I never was taught how to really, saw the woundingness around relationships, never really seeing the value around the consistency of even being in a wholesome relationship with myself as a man, and never seeing men display that consistently, and then in a culture where emotional intelligence is frowned upon, having women again, and it's not all, because I'm not labeling anyone, but the society, a lot of things have played a role in this. The powers that used to be, the abuse of power in certain dynamics where, your school systems and all these corporations, again, that's not teaching a lot of self-awareness around these very structures. I mean, these very dialogues of how important it is to have a relationship with yourself. You know, for one, look how we as kids naturally had a relationship and a bond with ourselves or with God. Naturally, we had a connection to source and the creator, naturally, because we were so connected to the essence of who we are that no one can ruin that but our caregivers or but those who we met, who again have mostly been wounded, or they have been things have been stripped from them or taken from them, or they have been programmed to believe otherwise. And so we as kids, or these kids naturally, their imagination is power. They naturally are sensitive. They naturally have emotional intelligence because they're naturally in tune. They naturally pick up on energy. And a lot of us are like that. We naturally pick up on the awareness around where we are. And when we come out of our mother's womb, we're naturally fighting against or having to go against spiritual warfare or learning this whole new world. So everything is sensitive. And so everything is pushed in our face right then and there. And you're seeing that display now with kids, social media, even us. Because, outside of just, the age and who we are and so forth, there's still a role in what all connects us, whether spiritually or on a soul level, there's an internal connection, where God or creator source, however you want to say it, like connects us all beyond what we see on the physical. So just as these kids are things have been thrown in their face, fear or propaganda, whatever you want to call it, propaganda. But the same thing goes for us on our level. It's different realms of things. So it's just as much they're being introduced and exposed to things, whether on a physical level, sexually, and music. We're also being exposed to things to where, we're now trying to learn what it is to reconnect to our emotions, to show up for ourselves. And so again, in these dialogues and how it plays out, it looks different for everyone. I've just had come to a lot of self-realization how I developed, realizing that I've always been emotionally intelligent. I've always been intelligent in all aspects. We all have. It's just how much we have been manipulated, confused, and delusional to these things. So drawn away from our value, the internal value that we have, which is limitless, which is infinite. So, that brings me back to, like, again, really seeing how having, at that moment, an emotionally unavailable or emotionally abusive, caregiver and or grandparents and so forth, I saw how that cycle continued. And then I also see how I'm a generational curse breaker. and how that led up to me speaking about like being here now is that with my princess, I'm able to realize and connect myself to realizing that her emotions are valuable, my emotions are valuable. And so how I come to that is that I had to realize like a lot of what she mirrors back or have like reflected back to me and connects for the father and daughter aspect is that we don't just as men, and this is what a lot of our women haven't had, or some have been affected by this, we don't just protect women on the physical level. You know, the more we become in tune with ourselves as men emotionally to meet women where they naturally are emotionally and, you know, in that heart space, we have to be self-aware or come to this awareness, both men and women, that we haven't really gotten these things, or these things were shunned upon or, you know, cast aside, that was really taught us our really true, you know, divine value. So with my princess, you know, the divine revealed to me like, you know, her emotions are just as valuable. But a lot of things in the shadow aspect that I didn't want to face, but I realized I was healing from, is that her presence in itself reflected back to me, you know, mirrored back to me my neglect, my emotional abuse of neglect and all that. And then it also showed me where I was emotionally impulsive. And what I mean by that is like, um, when we grow up, where how I grew up, my experience is that if I didn't have a mother and or a person that was very attentive to my emotions, you know, really say, you know, a healthy dialogue like, hey, your emotions matter. Your anger matters. I get you're frustrated. You know, how can I help you? Is there something I can do? You know, helping me navigate through my emotions to really become aware, like to feel safe in expressing myself. And you know, in my previous video, I talked about that. I use certain, you know, just as a man of a darker shade, because again, the oneness of it all, humanity, or the oneness of who we are, it's just, you know, me using this as an example or an analogy. It's like I have to not be honest with myself and say, you know, as a darker shade man, some may say black or melanated, you know, I cannot not realize or not look at the fact that in a society or a country that feel like my tears have mattered, or feel like, you know, my emotions are valuable. Because outside of just me trying to show up, that inner boy, that little boy that's still in me, but just societally, you know, experiencing a mother who was abusive in that way verbally, or wasn't attentive to my emotions, that groomed me to accept, you know, from other cultures or other people or societally to, you know, take on that narrative. And then that led me down a road to where this emotional impulsive behavior, holding on to this rage and this anger from being verbally and physically abused, you know, that was clearly an outlet or a road to self-destruction, self-destructive behavior, self-sacrificing myself, you know, and not feeling safe even to express my emotions to someone. And even when I did in certain relationships, you would be in relationships with women, you know, who again couldn't meet you at the emotional place, or didn't really have knowledge or even aware that their emotions were valuable. Because again, you interacting with women again who have been affected by mothers who did not value their emotions. So they seen their mother take on all this narrative of taking care of everybody. And that don't just mean physically, that means on the emotional level. That means her mama neglected her aspect of herself, or let's say someone that was in a substance abusive home or physical abusive home. Again, seeing these things displayed affected the psyche of people. You know, literally fed them, they were feeding them, or, you know, being fed these things visually, you know, that programmed their subconscious. So you're in relationships with people who, again, haven't known what it really was to have their emotions be valued, be validated. And you're talking about across the board where our kids haven't had these things. And it's been a while since we really felt like we can feel safe as, human beings to even express our emotions without judgment. Hey, I'm frustrated. I feel angered. So here he is in, 30s, 40s, 50s, and people, outside of like, people, religious beliefs and all these other things, we're talking about on an intelligence level as you remove the religion, you remove all these beliefs on a level of human experience, human behavior, psychological behavior, patterns. You're talking about things that, again, we all have developed our characteristics or what we call a sense of being through the lenses of other people and from their projections of really their internal conflict. So they have been projected onto us. So you're not in a country or in a place where you're listening or let people dictate your life who have no sense of emotional intelligence. They're numb. They're empty. Celebrities or whomever it is, no judgment on people, but I'm calling it out for what it is. If it look like a duck, quack like a duck, it's a fucking duck. You're talking about just visually seeing people at a place and you don't even know the backstory, if they really are in tune or have even any self-awareness. They're letting people dictate their life. They are going through stuff that we have no knowledge about. So again, having seen how this, this previous patriarchal or this false empowerment of how people have given this narrative of superiority or this sense of power, and I'm like, that's been the biggest illusion, because the more illusion of fear and separation, and now it's been exposed, it shows now the lack thereof of how we have been in a society that hasn't been even self-aware. We just let people tell us and dictate our own lives. We allowed people to basically let people write out our fate, decide our own fate. That's not the same as destiny. When you're choosing to show up for yourself and be there and see the value in that, you have been in a country or an environment or been around people who also, whether they put on this mask or physically smile and say all these things good that make you feel all this and, all these things, behind all of that, they're miserable or they're empty or they're hurting. They too have things going on at home, or they too have things that they don't talk about. Because again, generationally, ancestrally, this has been something that could have been inherited. When you look at how, when we were in our womb of our mothers as an egg inside of our mothers, in the womb of our grandmothers, we were as an egg inside of our mom. And then that goes back. So that's why I go back to the fact of how, when I saw really how the relationship with my mom and grandma was presently, and even with my great grandmother before she transitioned, a lot of seeing my great grandmother, she was like, let's say my experiences with her, like I would get, expelled out of school or whatever, get kicked out or whatever. And immediately, like, I remember vividly, like, we would go fishing. But it wasn't really a lot of talk around a lot of things. Sometimes I just go there, if I did something, I get a whooping, spanking, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, and we'll eat, we'll do certain things all day. We'll watch Madlock. We'll watch, certain shows that would come on, like, what was the other shows? It's so funny that I recall this. Andy Griffin? We'll watch, it's like, her favorite, my great grandmother's favorite was Chuck Norris. You know what I'm saying? What was it called? Texas Ranger or something like that. And in the heat of the night, those of you that know, boy, good Lord, I done called you out, man. Yeah. But just even with that, I just remember like the pattern. And when I really reflect on that, there was really no and a lot of us can relate to this, especially like they grew up in, like, let's say you grew up in the hood or the trenches or whatever. When we say big mama in a sense, or grandma, me mom, people that say stuff like that, it's like, that she was the anchor at that moment of keeping everyone together. And a lot of them kept everyone together through, their beliefs, or whether it be religion or just through their natural traditions. And so that's how vital and important the matriarchal is, but also in that matriarchal sense, the feminine aspect, the energy, where we learn these patterns, these traditions, these behavior patterns, these, where our character development has stemmed from as men and as women, as little boys, as little girls, because this energy has played out generationally, ancestrally. So when you're talking about inheritance, we're not just talking about on a material level of physical money and monetary things and homes and stuff like that. People, let me let you know, people still inherited spiritual gifts and or emotional things, patterns, behaviors. This is what's not discussed, but this is the intelligence. When you hear me speak about the divine mother and her father, again, that is making divine mother making herself known, because again, in the religious aspect, you cannot keep anything going without the woman. Behind any man, there's what they say, a strong woman, or a woman who is keeping them rooted, because in the metaphysical or spiritual aspect of that is that feminine, that dark aspect, the matriarchal aspect of all of that is the beginning of all things. So this patriarchal thing that people take pride in and boast about, a lot of that again couldn't be without there being an abuse of power, or them not refusing to acknowledge the matriarchal in a way. But a lot of that I'll go deep into it more. But again, I'm on the subject of how, on the topic of how. You okay, baby? Is the movie done? So, on that aspect of things, what was I getting at? Like when you really reflect on like your grandmothers and how they played a major role, we also got to reflect on their behaviors. What were their relationship with their mothers, their kids? And that doesn't just go away. That trickles down to you. I have to see how, like, in me develop my emotional intelligence. Okay, how did that emotional aspect form or be created? How has my relationship come to what it is with the not only the matriarchal, but with women, or, how is all of that connected? And so this is what has been hidden in a way, but now it's like it's showing its faces that we as men are also just a part of, the building and the rebuilding, the restructuring of how much we have played a role in the pain, but also we hold our women, accountable. And that way we have more of an effective relationship with our princesses, or, our daughters, because they don't just need just that protective on the physical aspect, or, just it all be centered around how much money or how much material things dad got, or, a shelter. Because what does it mean if you don't have, you're not engaging and listening to, how that mirrors back and how that has affected your relationship, and see how that connects you to your mother. And so that's what it has shown me a lot of, how it highlighted a lot with my princess, of how, me being, it shows up in my behavior, like how me seeing how men in my family were treated. A lot of them being emotionally neglected or abandoned or verbally abused physically, to where they're holding this rage, and a lot of them have been in prison, or a lot of them have experienced things to where, again, they don't know the importance of emotional intelligence. Or when we do in a society like this, when we try to express who we are, it's immediately, ostracized, or, immediately shunned and pushed away. Why is that? We don't ask ourselves. It's because, again, you're in a relationship or partnership and not realizing that, okay, this woman that I'm in a relationship with obviously is mirroring back to me that she also has some internal, or have experienced some type of neglect in some type of way, whether that be on a physical level or some type of emotional level. So my connection with my princess and my partner has shown me that full circle on both ends of the spectrum. Seeing the innocence in my princess, but also that showing me to see the innocence in myself and my partner. And her mother, because again, they both carry this feminine and masculine energy. So as much as I wanted to run from that emotional aspect of myself, it was showing me to embrace that again. Because here is a prince, a child that's innocent, who's just wanting her emotions to be heard and validated and feel seen. So we have just been focused on the physical aspect, giving them all these things materialistically, but internally, they want to feel validated and feel valuable. But that first starts with us. But we have been shown the opposite in the past. So we have displayed that, continue that loop of that until the generational, again, speaking about a generational, breaking a generational curse, is that now men can step up and realize, like, okay, my emotions are valuable. Have I had people in the past that, that knew that? No. And that reason, because I can take into account that I had to see that first. I had to see those inner wounds and realize, like, that the princess now, she's at her age and she's developing her emotions. She's trying to learn through it. So there's been moments where, the screams, or, that's just a form of, she cannot verbally say things as I do, because I've been more consistent through the years. So naturally for her, she's going to verbalize it from the inside, like, this is hurting me, or I'm trying to get your attention, such and such. We are no different right now at our ages. No matter where we are in our career, whether outside of the titles of mother and father, this is what has been internalized in humanity. It's because we haven't had those corporations or those outlets that really see us. Because the programming in that is that they don't see us. They see what they want to see, or they see the external and they judge the external, not knowing the internal conflict, not willing to get to that. Everyone don't have the money for therapy. This is why I do what I do, because someone will see this and realize, like, whoa, major clarity moment. You got to check yourself. You got to realize you got to show up for yourself. A lot of men, I had to come to this self-realization. I did not have that. It's a lot of things I'm coming to the awareness of when my grandfather transitioned. A lot of things aren't talked about when you're talking about dealing with, life insurance, wills, or living trust. A lot of things that a lot of us men didn't have, that mentor, didn't have that, guidance. So a lot of you women are dealing with men, again, instead of pointing your finger and throwing stones and hiding your hands. And what I mean by that is, like, constantly projecting onto him what his mother already didn't acknowledge or care to see. So he's in conflict, trying to live through and heal through that and make sense of that and try to accept that, let alone trying to make sense of himself in the world. So the last thing we need as men is to feel like we don't feel appreciated or valuable or seen from the inside out, not the outside in. And that's why you see this whole concept in the world right now is so much judgment. And this is why I always hold our women accountable. It's so much judgment around what a man brings to the table, rather than him already having these natural attributes of leadership or being valuable, or him trying to reconnect and heal through what he has already experienced with women. So that's immediately overlooked by looking at his appearance, his physical appearance. And you're not realizing to the depth of what he's internally going through. And it's immediately a lot of us who have been with relationship, or a lot of us coming from women or mothers. And this ain't playing a victim at all. This is, a lot of us have lived in that victim mentality. It's because we wasn't shown how to get out of it. We wasn't shown how to navigate and, rise above victimization and learn to walk in victory. Because as much as we are attacked, you are attacked. And so again, just how it has affected a lot of us as men to, a lot of us now, you see, that's why you have these podcasts. That's why you have a lot of men going and talking out and speaking, because this is where we feel safe. We're wanting to feel safe just like you want to feel safe. And now that we're getting a sense of power and wanting to move away and heal, women are not just the only ones that's doing this. We're trying to heal from those same women. Just to show up. And you're talking about men who's trying to heal through relationships with their mothers and or women, grandmothers, and betrayals and so forth. And this is not to disregard women's who they are, anybody, because it's not about a divide. It's about how the oneness of how we all are going through something. But us trying to heal through psychological warfare, spiritual warfare, having learned all these things and being programmed of what a man should be, and then coming to that self-realization that is complete, utterly bullshit. It's the opposite of that. For society to teach me that I shouldn't be in tune with my emotions, I shouldn't honor who I am, I shouldn't stand up, but that's a part of who I am. That is my divine genetic makeup. That's who I am. I look like my mom. I look like my mom for a reason. Most of the intelligence we get as human beings come from mama, scientifically. Okay, baby. So, a lot of these things, again, it's not discussed because it's been this combat or this like people automatically putting their boots and strapped up and ready to go out there to attack the next person instead of really actively listen. We haven't heard our problems been listened to, and a lot of what we have experienced, we haven't even had solutions, because solution is beyond what you think is material. The solution isn't always money. The solution isn't always food. The solution isn't always having to do with things on a material aspect, on a material plane. This is an internal thing that's been going on with people that's causing them this mental discomfort or dis-ease. The dis-ease in the bodies of our mothers who've been carrying so much baggage and pain. And now here we are making the conscious decision of being more intentional of expressing it, no matter how someone going to feel about us, no matter how, not taking no more, crap from nobody else. Not taking, feeling like we got to take on everyone else stuff anymore. That's how I became who coming to this awareness, is because I had to decide that I had to put down my mother's burdens. I had to put down my grandmother's burdens. That's what breaking generational curses is. Especially you men or people who want to develop or create a tribe, or some may say family. When you do that, men and women, you are making a decision to change the narrative and to create a whole different dialogue. No matter how many people judge you. I've had people judge me and accuse me of, the most craziest, insane thing. And I realize it reflects their own internal battle. And they probably still going to hold on to those things until they leave, because whatever their anger or frustration, whatever their fears around what it is, some people don't know how to navigate it. And our elders didn't know how to navigate it. We're talking about grandmothers and mothers and so forth who never, at a time or moments that we've been living in, they never were shown how to navigate their emotions. let alone grow up in systems or environments where they had to step up in a position to where they were uncomfortable or they didn't feel that they were secure in, but they did it anyway to keep everything together. And where's the credit? Where's the clap for those women that keep this shit together? And the men. But most importantly, where has the credit in all these things where they know that's coming to surface that how all of this have been created from the matriarchal, the empires, even the ones that were pushed aside and have fallen only to rise again. So that's what a lot of this is about. Again, the emotional intelligence comes when we can able to see the emotional ignorance, which is the pain that we have neglected for so long within ourselves, the things that we don't want to see. So I have one of the other topics I probably talk about on another video, but I'm going to talk about it briefly here, is how accepting the fact of letting go of mamas and daddies and whoever burdens. Let them learn the consequences from their actions. And then that means even sometimes walking away. Knowing that mama still is doing this. I've tried to help for so many years. I've tried to lend my hand. I've been trying to pour from an empty cup and realizing like, wow, look at how my life is. And I had to take accountability in that and not blame no one else. Why is my life reflecting this way? Because I realized, like, in breaking generational curses, I'm not going to continue to do the same thing. That's what self-awareness is. They didn't have self-awareness because they're purposely and intentionally, due to their programming, still doing the same thing because that's all they know. And that's a grieving process that comes with that, spiritually and physically. You know, having to accept that, you know what, my mom created this for herself. Through her own actions. My dad created this for himself. But if I'm here to do it differently, that's emotional intelligence. That's also an intelligence around how know thyself, to be aware of the fact that I have to be accountable for me first. And so the awareness in a lot of that is that, again, we now having to refocus and come back home to ourselves. To know that we no longer will neglect ourselves, to self-sacrifice ourselves for what? The betterment of others? The contradictory in that? You don't have to self-sacrifice yourself anymore. Not even for your relationship with your wife, partner, spouse, even with your kids. Because it's a balance. It's just as much as you want to show up for them. Why continue to go out here and buy all this stuff and not see the pattern? This is a part of breaking generational curse. You're buying up all this stuff or doing all these things. But what about those kids who, again, your children who simply don't even care about none of that? They're more concerned about you're teaching them a behavior pattern of what is valuable in this world and what would be valuable when you're gone. So are you teaching them that material things are more valuable than their mental health, their spiritual health, their physical well-being? Have we not seen all this displayed previously before we have gotten here to see like, whoa, hold on. Mama is really effed up right now, but mama don't see it. Mama can get better, but how many times we going to sit there? Because a lot of the fear, subconscious fears around because of the emotional attachment, not the emotional intelligence, the emotional attachment to the idea and the fear around death. So attached to the physical aspect of that and realizing everyone is going to go. The emotional intelligence in that is that you're going to grieve just as you celebrate when they here, celebrate when they depart. The memories and so forth. Yes, you still can grieve through that and go get through it the best way you know how. But the emotional intelligence also is in after this person has transitioned in accepting that, because it's going to happen to you and your kids is going to experience. The emotional intelligence in that is that, you know what? I can grieve. I can value my emotions. I can express myself and then learn to move forward with that. That doesn't mean the memory goes away. It's just how you're getting and navigating through those emotions in an intentional way, not in a neglecting way. And that's why I see so centered around the funerals and a lot of those things is because these people have developed so much of an attachment to the idea of people and not knowing what it is to really celebrate their transition. That they don't have to keep going through this, what we call the human experience, or go through all these trials. And it's not to say that, your life doesn't have to be suffering, is what I'm saying, or survival. So when you learn to elevate and evolve through, this process of being where you are, it's a process of realizing like, no, I don't have to suffer and survive like mom and dad did. Because a lot of what they did, what we don't want to accept, is that they were living through survival. They were living through suffering. And the reason being is because their attachment to so many things externally. Do you see this pattern? Oh, because myself, I'm not going to go out there and be dishonest with myself and say, and tell my daughter, I'm going to do this. Or daddy going to get you this. When I have to look at myself and be like, okay, why would I create a false narrative or a false foundation or illusion on that? Say, hey, daddy's going to get you this. And I have to look at my account or just look at where I'm at in life and be like, you know what? I know, why would I be dishonest to myself and her? See, we have experienced that. Mom and daddy saying we're going to do this. That's a part of emotional neglect. That's a part of, them creating a false value system, a foundation upon dishonesty. And then this has gradually affected us throughout the years. And now we're at this place like, wow, not only was I lied to, or a person was dishonest with me, but I've been dishonest with myself by still taking on this narrative that I have to create relationships like this and breaking generational curses. I refuse to do that. Because I had to learn that sometimes you're going to get into things, you're going to navigate through life, and all the things are not going to be there. But that's the thing about how the pieces come together. Because it's not just about showing up financially. And I had to accept that. I had to look at it from a spiritual currency aspect, to where you're teaching teaching my princess about morals and principles and standing on integrity. Like, why would I tell her like, oh, I have, or I'm going to do this for you? No, it's integrity and being honest with yourself and your child, so they don't got to figure you out when you get a certain age or get loaned and, oh, daddy, you lied to me, you're dishonest, because that creates resentment. And this is what happens what has happened with our elders, that a lot of them are bitter, or a lot of them have, they're bitter because the suffering, preying on childhood woundings, not really knowing how to show up for themselves, or only use the tools that they have, because it's different for everyone. But then the selfishness around when you're trying to elevate or move on in life, and you see the emotional attachment, or you see the abusive behavior verbally, when they don't get their way. And that connects back to their inner child, because they didn't receive, or they didn't feel like they didn't get their way. When they were a child, they felt like they had to grow up early. They had to be responsible early because of the decision that they made. So no one's exempt from what we call karma, because karma comes to teach lessons, to prepare you for a dharma path. So when we talking about allowing people to learn from their consequences, I'm not exempt. No one's exempt. Just as we learn as a child. You do your best from your perception when you're caregivers. Your perception from that man and a woman, whatever you are, your perceptions are going to be completely different. Because of your childhood and your experience were completely different. It was unique. But just as well as those childhood experiences, whether traumas and or not, because some of you could be in relationships or be in partnerships or have children by someone who didn't experience the pain or didn't experience certain things. I had to come to that awareness, because you can attract people, and then we take on this dialogue just because they're from a different culture or creed or race, that they have it better. and not realizing you don't know what has been going on in their family. You don't know what their mother and or father or anybody is struggling with on, as far as with their health, their mental health, so many other things. You don't know what vices or, their generational curses that they're unaware of, that they're trying to break. And then you're there to bring that awareness, or you're there to illuminate, mirror back to them so many things. Then seeing the bigger picture with a lot of partnerships, now that you're going to see that, yeah, you can see other people glamorize, but you don't know what type of vices and spiritual, things that have followed these celebrities or other people that y'all don't realize that they're playing their role. You don't know to the depths of what they're experiencing. You have no idea. Because a lot of us been so focused on judging people on the exterior. And that's what society has been in. Just because someone shows up in this and that, you don't know what they did to get there. You don't know really to the depths of what they did to get there. That's like, come on now. I ain't gonna get into all that. But where I'm getting at is that the integrity, the morals, the principles, that's what's being restored. When we talk about emotional intelligence, this isn't something that's broadcast. You've been in a society in corrupted values. Teaching kids, even in school, that for them not to see their value, to see value in more of something external, as in getting an education or what it is to be educated or what it is to get these things. But what about their internal value that is limitless? Why aren't we teaching them that? You know how it was and affected me, like I said, to even come to this awareness, to even see how people that I know in my immediate family been affected by this and living with this, whether through substance abuse because they're trying to escape or they've been suppressing their emotions for so long that they don't even know how to navigate it. And then they can't call their mother or their father. They can't call their mother and father for that emotional support. Like, let's talk about it. Every one of us can't not call and be like, hey, mom, I want to talk to you about what hurt me. Because immediately, some of them aren't even open. They're blocked. Their heart, their mind may be open, but their heart, because everyone don't have the same heart as you. They're not open to listening. Because immediately when you say something, it doesn't mean to trust the process. And sometimes distance has to happen or whatever it is. There's always progression, but you have to see it with yourself first. That's what we have been missing out on. The missing piece is you. But we've been thinking other people have been the missing piece. But the Creator God source has been telling you, like, you are the missing piece for yourself. So that piece that you're trying to find is you. So again, a lot of us can't call up our mom and be like, we're just now finding out shit that, wow, I really went through this. That shit really hurt me. So to try to call up your mom, some of us don't even physically, because some of us can relate to where our mothers and fathers are physically, some of them maybe transition. Some of us had grandmothers and grandfathers that only showed us, so they may be transition. But then you can have a mother that's physically or father physically present. And I don't just mean around you, but they're so disconnected from themselves, their emotions, and trying to learn and still navigate or still suppressing. So the process is different for everybody. So that's why it's like really having to learn a place of compassion, because a lot of us now are trying to step up and really talk about things that we have to sit with and have been still trying to get through. How we felt others betrayed us, but then for so many years, we realized how much we betrayed and abandoned ourselves. That's like, shit. Then you be like laughing. You be like, damn, whoa, was I stupid? But it ain't even the fact that you're stupid. It's in a way of like, the ignorance is bliss. Like, wow. And that's why you hear that saying goes, had I known this back then, I wouldn't have did. But nah, in reality, see the beauty and the growth. See the polarity, the dark and the light aspect of it. Be able to see the shadow aspect of it, to see that where you are now, to see the value in that. Then that'll let you see the value in other people. That's one of the things, the deepest acceptance that I had to come to the self-realization about. A lot of us realizing like our mothers and certain people are still battling with substance abuse, mental health, disorders, or, a lot of things that we're coming to the awareness of, breaking generational curses and trying to change, they're not in agreement with, they don't support, they're not empowering us towards our vision and dreams, and then having to move forward with that, and even having to accept to leave people behind and leave them where they're at, having to accept that they need to learn through their consequences, that where they got themselves is from their own actions. And that's been one of the most challenging things, because you want to reach back and grab everybody and save everybody. And let's be real, Muhammad, Jesus, or anybody else, they didn't teach, like, you haven't seen them physically to tell them, like, they didn't come to tell you to save yourself. To show up for yourself, to what it is to be in tune with yourself and so forth. Like, come on now. Bubble, yep, just busted. Let's talk, like, come on. I'm gonna ruffle some feathers. I'm here to make you feel uncomfortable, because we've been in comfortability for so long. How the fuck you think change is gonna be created? This is the revolution, and it won't be televised. It's just gonna be exposed for what it is. So in order for me to see the corruption in the societies, in the communities and so forth, somebody got to call it out. Who else is going to create change? Who else is going to create shift? You got to do this shit fearlessly. You got to be sometimes in order for you to break those generational curses, that process also is a process of you maneuvering through where you are to see the generational curse. To be able to see the gift when you move forward, because you're the gift and the curse. And the curse isn't something like, oh my gosh, oh God. No, you have to see the patterns, the behavior patterns that have kept that lineage of people in a loop. And if I look at certain things, it's not attack anybody. There hasn't been emotional intelligence, because there's been emotional neglect and abandonment. So how do I create a reality or a lineage to progress? Is to see the importance of how emotional intelligence, your emotions guide you. Emote, action, ocean, motion. They're a guide. There's enlightenment. There's light in the darkness. But it's if you're willing to see it. So a lot of us as women and men right now learning, we wasn't brought up on emotional intelligence, being self-aware, on self-care and self-love. We wasn't brought up on that. So when you go and accept the reality, that's how you break the generational chain. You still give value to be like, you know what, I'm glad that I went through that with my mother and my father. Or, I give gratitude to those relationships. I'm grateful because you know what? That person, we both not escaped each other. I'm being funny, but like, dang, boy, had we not seen each other or seen somebody not seeing something, someone not chose better, we'd have still been continuing the same loop or behavior patterns that maybe their mother went through, or father or somebody else. So again, I might definitely do a part 2 to this, but again, this is the beauty of the shift and the change. To reinvent and recreate. You got to see the corruptions in these corporations, the hospitals, and all these places, because again, they're not asking women, how are you? Would you not really want to get this epidural? How can we help you feel much better and safe? School ain't asking you how you do. You rarely got some teachers when you walk into school. When I used to be in there, hey, how was your day? Hey, how was your night? Hey, what you going through? Shit, some of us went through stuff to where as soon as they found out you got a whooping or something, DSS was called, or Child Protective Services. Immediately trying to create something on these corrupted foundations that was just focused on dividing the family. Let's talk about it. And not seeing how that affected so many mothers who have promoted and their energy have fueled this dysfunction in these corporations. And then being delusional, and then when it falls apart, And then when someone calls it out for what it really is, they attack the messenger, or they attack that which is sent to guide them away from what's destroying them. Whew. I'm going to go on that one. Peace and blessings. Shalom.